There was a cost in following Jesus. The cost was getting rid of his possessions, selling his possessions, and taking what would come back from that and giving to the poor. And this man wasn't willing to do that. And many of us, I think we get used to comfortable Christianity. I really believe that. Because we get this picture in our head that God is love and He is love and He understands and da-da-da-da. I don't know. I wish it was that easy. But it's not. It's not that God isn't love. God is love. But you have to understand that in order to go deeper in your relationship with God, there's something that you have to give up. It's like when you're in a relationship. You have to do things that your spouse wants to do. You may not enjoy it because you love her and you want to have a healthy relationship. And so sometimes you do things because you want to bless her. And so, like one of the things that, that I usually do is, my wife loves to shop. I don't like to shop. And I'm like all the guys. And when I go shopping, I know what I want. And I'll go get it, and I'm out the door. But when I go with my wife, she has to walk through every aisle, look at everything. Oh, look at all the prices. I'm thankful for the fact that she looks at all the prices. But she has to look at everything. The reality is, deep down, I don't really enjoy it. But I do it because that's what she likes to do. And so, there is a little bit of a cost. And the cost is, it's not about me, but it's about giving. And the cost that we have to understand is it's about giving of ourselves. The other thing I've realized is when we think about cost, when we think about giving up, I also realize that in Christianity there's no shortcuts. When you're trying to serve the Lord, there's no shortcuts. I wish there was, because I like shortcuts. But the reality is there's no shortcuts. When I was growing up in Dodge City, I used to run cross country. And when we used to run cross country, we used to run out in the country on dirt roads and stuff. And I know, Dave, when you were probably growing up, they didn't have dirt roads back then. But when I was growing up, we had dirt roads. And so when we used to run, sometimes we would run like 10 miles, 8 miles, whatever. And we'd go on these long runs and as we're running, there's like these dirt roads, and around those dirt roads are big fields. And so we would just run, and we wanted to make sure we got a good workout in, because on race day we wanted to do a good job. And so as we're running, we would look back, and everybody else is like way back there. And so we would, all right, we're doing good. We just keep going. But then when it would be close to ending our workout, we look back, and everybody's right behind us. How did that happen? Aha. Those guys were cut through the field. They were taking the shortcuts. But on the race day, it was evident. The guys who were taking shortcuts, they paid the price. And so, when we talk about the Christian faith, there are no shortcuts. And if you give up of yourself now, God will bless you for it. Because our reward is eternal. And I think we have to it's a hard thing, and I wrestle with that myself, because the thing is when we think about serving God, sometimes we want to see the fruits of our labor right away. But the reality is that sometimes it doesn't happen. We don't see the fruit of our labor right away. Sometimes it takes a long time, or sometimes we won't see it. Or maybe someday we'll see it when it's all over, said and done. But it's still a hard thing. But we all have to understand, all that we do, God sees. And He does bless you for it. And so when I talk about giving up of yourself, the cost is I want to be one with Christ. You know, I love the words of Apostle Paul in Galatians 2:20. Here's what he says: I have been put up on the cross to die with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in this body, I live by putting my trust in the Son of God. He was the one who loved me and gave Himself for me. When we talk about giving up of ourselves, you know, God is not asking us to do anything that He hasn't done Himself. The reason why we celebrate Christmas, the reason why we celebrate the birth of Christ is because God became man. He left His throne. He left His throne, became man, was born in a manger, felt pain, just like you and I feel pain, was tempted, just like you and I are tempted. He was cursed at, He was spit upon, He was nailed to a tree and died for our sins. So you want to talk about cost? You want to talk about giving up? Let me remind you, it cost God a lot. And what it cost God and what you and I have to give up, there's no comparison. The third thing I see in this passage is that in order for us to have Christ be real in our life, we have to have a personal relationship with God. It's about a personal relationship. This man who came to Jesus, yes, he was doing all the right things. He was doing all those things, and he was doing the best that he could. But when it came to having a personal relationship with God, he couldn't do it. He could not do it. And so when we talk about having a personal relationship with God, we have to make sure that nothing gets in my relationship with God. Nothing. And that means no football. If I have to give up watching a Bears game, I will. And Jim can tell you, because when we do basketball games here, I'm on my phone looking at the scores. But I've realized that isn't that important. And I'm not saying, stop watching games and football and stop enjoying those things. What I'm saying is have a balance. Because I've just realized that I've been spending way too much time investing in watching all the sports, and I'm one of those sports nut guys. I love sports, and I spend so much time doing that, and yet, unlike everybody else, I get behind in my personal relationship with God, and that can't happen. Because when that happens, I find myself where I'm running to my shelf, picking up my plastic Jesus, dusting him off, bringing him back, saying my prayer, and after my prayer is answered, I run back over and I put him back on the shelf. Why? Because I'm not spending the quality time that I need to spend to have a quality relationship with God.